Okay, welcome. I'm Samuel Sennett. I want to tell you a little bit about writing a final research report. And an important concept is knowing your audience. So, there's a great research professor who's just retired here, and she teaches us about looking at the journal that we hope to publish in and reading 3 papers from that journal and really looking at this matters. Are you writing to university faculty and editors, reviewers, or are you really gearing this towards practitioners or parents? Looking at your audience matters. Knowing that the audience has unique expectations. Here you can see, policymakers may have very different expectations than journal reviewers or editors. I'm a university faculty member, and I'm asking you to do academic writing. So there might be internal standards in the class or in the program you're in. The general guideline, I think this academic writing is not creative writing. I think it's important to remember that you're doing a type of technical writing. That being said, you can still be creative, and some of the best academic writing has things like analogy in it. It just has to be used very cautiously, because, of course, there's conventions. There's agreed upon procedures that aren't just there for no reason. They're so that the data can be reported accurately, and the readability and credibility can be easily ascertained. Style guides like APA matter because it makes it easy for people to read these at scale. So on a certain level, here are some of the key elements. You've got just the title. This is an important mechanism for initial screening for someone who might be interested in reading your paper. It should be very clear, and oftentimes the titles are very long. Try to make it as concise as possible, and it's as concise as needed. And so you may see differences in person and voice between qualitative and quantitative reports. You often see qualitative reports taking a first-person perspective. That's not always the case. Some of the case study research might be more written as in the third person, as almost like a reporter. And quantitative reports are almost always written in the third person. There is a major focus on active voice versus passive voice, and you can often get dinged for that in different venues. So research reports are typically written in the past tense, and lit review, methodology, results, conclusions, they're typically past tense. There is some idea that when you're introducing the paper, it could be written in the present tense. Recommendations might be presented in the future tense. You just got to really feel out what's right in the paper, but it's typically all past tense. An important ethical consideration, looking back to the beginning of the course, is keeping anonymity and confidentiality. Sometimes we use pseudonyms. Sometimes we do things to skew the ability of people to ascertain who the participants are. One important thing to think about is that, if you remember, we talked about these cycles, and it's the research educational cycle is iterative, and that any one study is typically not the end of the line. And so we avoid statements made with too much confidence or certainty. They just come off as false, really, and almost as selling. And so we speak with a level of caution that's commensurate with where we're at in the research. That's one way to look at it. So we want to have very definitive presentation, clear representation of our methods, results, descriptive analysis, and we want to be tentative with our results of inference or inductive analysis, our conclusions, the implications. And the reason why we do that is because of the iterative nature, that we may not have that confidence or certainty with where we're at. Okay, so the clarity and consistency is really important. The rule of thumb or the gist is that we want another person to be able to read and duplicate the methodology of the study with relative ease. Now, of course, sometimes they may need to request your code book or your protocols or something to fully replicate. But the basic logic should be replicable. And these words and symbols, abbreviations, they should be consistent and clearly spelled out. Your formatting has sections, tables, charts, figures. They're all done very predictably and in a parallel fashion. You just want to make it as easy to read as possible. The language should be clear and simple. And this is part of the APA guidelines, is economy of expression. You typically want to use shorter sentences and eliminate redundancy and wordiness. And don't really try to impress readers. It's okay to use your thesaurus, but you're not trying to be flowery, if you will. And I think it's a fine line when we make these statements. It's very hard to coach. It's easier to coach when we see it, right? Someone goes overboard with their description. That's easy to call out. But in general, if you just have this guideline in your mind of how can I just be really clear? How can I communicate clearly and consistently? That's a good rule of thumb. There's typically a format that's followed, or what they're calling here a generic outline. There's typically these types of sections, some sort of introduction of the problem and the purpose. You do some literature review. You introduce your research questions. You then dive into methodology, results, conclusions, recommendations, and references. For qualitative research, it's not as structured. So there's not as much of a template. It's very different than quantitative, where quantitative research is going to be very structured according to what we just showed. And you're going to have to make up your own structure and standards for headings and subheadings. The length, this usually is 20 to 30 double-spaced pages. Sometimes you get 35 pages, even 40. You really have to adhere to these, and roughly 2.5 pages of double-spaced type will fit into 1 page of final laid-out print. The editors and typesetters have great skill. It's really cool to see a paper go from your notes to your Word doc to the published format. I highly recommend, following that process. It's just a cool thing. So you're in qualitative research, you're taking readers on a journey. You do want to be scientific. You want to really, be descriptive. You want to you want to pull out things that aren't absolutely essential into things like tables and appendix items. When we shift over to quantitative results, this is where I have much more experience. I have completed qualitative manuscripts. We're trying to publish one right now. That's why I'm hesitating. It's a good learning experience for me. That being said, a lot of the quantitative types of studies, there's just a very clear expected format. You follow that format, and this rounding things out, looking at your conclusions, discussion, and recommendations. This is a bit of license where you can interpret and discuss what you see. It's not used for speculation. This has to be based on fact and tied to theory in your literature review. How do you do this? How do you go through this process towards completion? One of the most effective things, people do it in different ways, is a writing routine. Some people say write at the same time every day. That's cool if that works for you, but the point is, write periodically. One strategy is to write as if you're talking to a friend, beginning with an outline. We did that in this course. That can really help. It helps you not worry about spelling, grammar, and kind of how it overall reads at first. You're just getting the ideas out to get feedback on that, either from yourself or others. And realizing that a draft is really only the first step. I remember people saying this and be like, yeah, right. Well, actually, I'm about to go into finalizing a draft of a paper this week, and it's like, we've worked on it so many different ways and times, and it's just remarkable how much you edit a paper that gets published. And this can be a really fun process. Just being realistic with your writing schedule matters a lot. And also developing the commitment to writing throughout all processes. This is something that I am definitely going to do more of in the future, is you can write a lot of your study as you're doing it. A lot of times we've waited till we're done, and then it's a lot harder. Okay, so good luck. I know some of you will go on to do research degrees. Some of you will go on to do lots of conference presentations. I hope you can have fun with your academic writing. Just make sure you give yourself enough time. That's the key thing. Time on task. Okay, thank you for listening.